A list of Washington, D.C. area nonprofit organizations at American.edu. American.edu/ocl/volunteer/nonprofit-directories.cfm. Chapter 1. A list of D.C. area nonprofit organizations. 1. Disability D.C. area nonprofit websites. American.edu/volunteer. Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind. 202 454-6400/ clb.org. 1825 K Street NW Suite 1103 Washington, D.C. 20006. D.C. Center for Independent Living. 202 388-0033/ dccil.org. 2600 12th Street Northeast Washington, D.C. 20018. Dreams for Kids D.C. 301-742-7787. dreamsforkids.org. Kids Enjoy Exercise Now, Keene. 301-770-3200. KeeneGreetardC.org. The ARC, for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. 202-617-3266/ARC. ARCDC.net. 1825 K Street NW, Suite 1200, Washington, D.C. 20006. Isaiah House location. So Others Might Eat, Some. 202-797-8806-EXT1068/. Some.org. 71 O Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. Special Olympics. 202-408-2640. SpecialOlympicsDC.org. 415 Michigan Avenue Northeast Washington, D.C. 20017. Volunteers of America, District of Columbia Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Services. 301-389-3156. voaches.org. vohchesapeake.org/DC-IDD. 7505 Greenway Center Suite 201 Greenbelt, Maryland 20770. African Community DC area nonprofit websites. 1. The Africa Faith and Justice Network. 202-817-3670. afjn.org. 3025 4th Street Northeast Suite 122 Washington, D.C. 20017. African Immigrant and Refugee Foundation. 301-593-0241, volunteer. airfound.org. 11350 Baroque Road No. 100 Silver Spring, Maryland 20901. African Wildlife Foundation. The African Wildlife Foundation. 202-939-3333. awf.org. awf.org. 1100 New Jersey Avenue Southeast Suite 900 Washington, D.C. 20003. Africa Care. 202-462-36. 14. Info. africary.org. 440 R. St. N.W., Washington, D.C. 20001. The Ark Foundation of Africa. 202-832-5420. arcafrica.org. 1002 Maryland Avenue Northeast Washington, D.C. 20002. Arlington Academy of Hope, A. Helps children in rural Uganda. 703-879-6034. auganda.org. 3100 Clarendon Boulevard, Arlington, Virginia 22201. Corporate Council on Africa. 202-835-1115. africacncl.org/corporate-qncilonafrica.com. 1100 17th St. Northwest Suite 1200 Washington, D.C. 20036. Ethiopian Community Development Council, Inc. ECDC. ecdcinternational.org, 703-685-0510. ecdcuz.org. 901s. Highland St., Arlington, Virginia 22204. Fahang Kra Akoma N Tozo, Fan. Positive Youth Development Perspective to DC Youth in Foster Care. 202-380-9390, info. fan-dc.org. 2815 Stanton Road, Southeast Washington, D.C. 20020. Institute for East African Councils on Higher Education, IEA. IEACouncils.org, 202-997-6684. IEACouncils.org. 3636 16th Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20010. Refugee Council USA. rcusa.org. 1628 16th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. Refugees International. refugiesinternational.org, 202-828-0110. 1800 M St. NW Suite 405 N Washington, D.C. 20036. Arts and Theater DC area nonprofit websites. Gala Hispanic Theater, Grupo de Artistas Latinoamericanos. National Center for Latino Performing Arts. 202-234-7174. galathatri.org. 3333 14th Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20010. Ola Cultura DC. olacultura.com. Anacostia Community Museum, ACM. 202-633-4823. si.edu. anacostia.si.edu. 1901 Ford Place, SC, Washington, D.C. 20020. Arts for the Aging. 301-255-0103, Program.Director. aftaarts.org. 15800 Krabs Branchway Suite 300 Rockville, Maryland 20855. Bloom Bars. bloombars.com. 3222 11th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20010. Critical Exposure. criticalexposure.org. 1816 12th Street, Northwest Washington, D.C., D.C. 20009. Dance Place. 202-269-1600, Youth Programs. danceplace.org. 3225 8th St. Northeast Washington, D.C. 20017. Duke Ellington School of the Arts. 202-282-0123. ellingtonchool.org. 3500 R St. N.W., Washington, D.C. 20007. Fillmore Arts Center. 202-465-2810. fillmoreartscenter.org. Fillmore West, 1819 35th St. Northwest 3rd floor Fillmore/Hardy Building. Girls Rock DC. 202-681-7625, volunteer. girlsrockkdc.org. 1525 Newton St. Latin American Youth Center, LAYC. 202-319-2225. layc-dc.org. 1419 Columbia Road, NW, Washington, D.C. 20009. Life Pieces to Masterpieces. 202-399-7703. lifepieces.org. Dr. Charles R. Drew Elementary School 5600 Eads Street, NE, Washington, D.C. 20019. The National Theatre. thenadionaLDC.org, 202-628-6161, extension 229. 1321 Pennsylvania Avenue, NW, Washington, D.C. 20004. Sitar Arts Center. 202-797-2145x107. satarartcenter.org. 1700 Colorama Road Northwest Suite 101 Washington, D.C. 20009. Woolly Mammoth Theatre Company. 202-349-1289. WoollyMammoth.net. 641 D Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20004. Young Playwrights Theatre, YPT. 202-387-9173. yptdc.org. 6925 Willow St. Northwest Suite LL 230, Washington, D.C. 20012. Asian American and Pacific Islander D.C. area nonprofit websites. Asian American Lead. ALEAD. 202-884-0322. aalead.org. 1029 Vermont Avenue Northwest Suite 810 Washington, D.C. 20005. Association of Vietnamese Americans. 301-588-6862. avovs.org. 8121 Georgia Avenue Suite 503 Silver Spring, Maryland 20910. Hmong National Development, Inc. 844-454-1144. hndinc.org. 1322 18th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20036. SALT South Asian Americans Leading Together. 301-270-1855. SALT.org. 6930 Carroll Avenue Suite 506 Tacoma Park, Maryland 20912. Vietnamese American Community Service Center. 202-257-4627. vaxc.tripod.com. 2437 15th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. Black D.C. area nonprofit websites. National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP. 202-667-1700. NAACPDC.org. 1000 U Street NW Suite 100 Washington, D.C. 20001. National Black Justice Coalition. 202-319-1552. NBJC.org. Operation Understanding D.C. 202-234-6832. UDC.org. 3000 Connecticut Avenue NW Suite 335, Washington, D.C. 20008. The Bethune-du-Bois Institute. 301-562-8300. bethune-dubois.org. 8630 Fenton St. Suite 730 Silver Spring, Maryland 20910. The Education Trust. 202-293-1217x300. edtrust.org. 1250 HST, NW Suite 700, Washington, D.C. 20005. Business and Labor D.C. area nonprofit websites. D.C. Employment Justice Center. 202-828-9675. dcejc.org. 1413 K Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20005. D.C. Stop Modern Slavery. StopModernSlavery.org. PO Box 66462 Washington, D.C. 20035. 1 D.C. 202-232-2915. 1COnline.org. 614 S Street NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. Latino Economic Development Corporation, LEDC. 202-588-5102. LetSeeMetro.org. Free the Slaves. 202-775-7480. FreedHeSlaves.net. 1320 19th Street Northwest Suite 600 Washington, D.C. 20036. Green America. 202-872-5363. greenamerica.org. 1612 K Street NW, Suite 600, Washington, D.C. 20006. International Labor Rights Forum. 202-347-4100. LaborRights.org. 1634 I St. N.W. Suite 1001, Washington, D.C. 20006. Minority Business Enterprise Center. 202-671-1552. dcmbec.org. 64 New York Avenue. NE Suite 3152, Washington, D.C. 20002. National Women's Business Council. 202-205-3850. nwbc.gov. 409 3rd Street SW, 5th floor, Washington, D.C. 20416. Youth D.C. Area Nonprofit Websites. Center for Community Engagement and Service. 273-202-885 Serve. American.edu/volunteer. Jubilee Youth Services. JubileeHousing.org, 202-299-1240. JubileeHousing.org. 1640 Columbia Road. NWDC 20009. Latin American Youth Center. LAYC-DC.org, 202-768-7800. 1419 Columbia Road. NW, Washington, D.C. 20009. LAYC Career Academy Public Charter School. 202-866-0409 3224. laycca.org. laycca.org/contactus.html. 16th St. N.W., Washington, D.C. 20010. Gear Up. Federal Program. 202-453-6195. ed.gov. ed.gov/program/gearup/applicant.html. I Have a Dream Foundation. ihaveadreamfoundation.org. 322 8th Avenue Suite 202 New York, New York 10001. Latino Student Fund, LSF. latinostudentfund.org. 202-244-3438. National College Access Network. Serving thousands of low-income students. Improve access to and success in post-secondary education. ncan.org. 1001 Connecticut Avenue NW, Suite 300 Washington, D.C. 20036. Seoul. Student Athletes Organized to Understand Leadership. 202-803-2083. seoulprograms.org. 1140 3rd St. Northeast Washington, D.C. 20002. Federal Trio Programs. Assist Low-Income Individuals. 202-453-6914. ed.gov/www.ed.gov/about/offices/list/ope/trios/index.html. Community Development DC Area Nonprofit Websites. Center for Community Change. 202-339-9300. communitychange.org. 1536 U Street NW, Washington, D.C. 20009. Central American Resource Center of Washington, D.C., Carison. 202-328-9799. caresendc.org. 1460 Columbia Road Northwest Washington, D.C. Citizens for Global Solutions. 202-546-3950. globalsolutions.org. 420 7th St. Southeast Washington, D.C. 20003. Coalition for Smarter Growth. 202-675-0016. smartergrowth.net, 316 F Street NEC Suite 200, Washington, D.C. 20002. Community Food Works. cfwdc.org. 810 7th Street Northeast Washington, D.C. 20002. DCEJC.org, 1413 K Street NW, Washington, D.C. 20005. Empower DC. 202-234-9119. EmpowerDC.org. 1419 V St. NW, Washington, D.C. 20009. Fair Chance. 202-467-2420. Fairchance.org, 2001 S. St. NW Suite 310, Washington, D.C. 20009. Goodwill of Greater Washington. 202-715-2658. dcgoodwill.org, 2200 South Dakota Avenue Northeast Washington, D.C. 20018. Green DMW. greendmvfoundation.org, 888-625-4440. greendmv.org, 4409 South Capitol Street SW. Latino Economic Development Center, LEDC. 641 S St. NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. Lift. 202-289-1151. liftcommunities.org. 1620 I St. NW, Suite 820, Washington, D.C. 20006. Neighbors Constjo. 202-234-6855. neighborsc.org, 6323 Georgia Avenue Northwest Suite 206 Washington, D.C. 20011. Criminal Justice D.C. Area Nonprofit Websites. Campaign for the Fair Sentencing of Youth. 202-289-4677. FairsIntensiINGoffYouth.org. 1319 F St. NW Suite 303, Washington, D.C. 20004. Citizens United for Rehabilitation of Errants. CureNational.org. 202-789-2126. PO Box 15067 S.E Station, 600 Pennsylvania Avenue. SE, Washington, D.C. 20003. Coalition for Juvenile Justice. 202-827-9751. juvjustice.org. Court Service and Offender Supervision Agency. 202-220-5300. csosa.gov 633 Indiana Avenue NWDC 20004. Crossroads Youth Opportunity Center, CYOC. 240-670-8122. IDENTITY-YOUTH.org. 7676 New Hampshire Avenue No. 411, Tacoma Park, Maryland 20912. DC Books to Prisons. dcbookstoprisoners.org. Foundry United Methodist Church 1500, 16th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20036. Families Against Mandatory Minimums, FAMM. 202-822-6700, FAM. FAMM.org. 1100 H St. NW Suite 1000, Washington, D.C. 20005. Free Minds Book Club and Writing Workshop. 202-758-0829. freemindsbookclub.org. Thurgood Marshall Center for Services 1816 12th Street Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. DC Safe. Domestic Violence Survivors. 202-506-2901. dcsafe.org. 6856 Eastern Avenue Northwest Suite 212 Washington, D.C. 20012. Sasha Bruce Youth Work. At-Risk Youth. sashabruce.org, 202-675-9340. 745 8th Street SE Washington, D.C. 20003. The Sentencing Project. 202-628-0871. sentencingproject.org. 1705 DeSalle Street NW, 8th floor, Washington, D.C. 20036. Young Ladies of Tomorrow. Girls that have experienced the juvenile justice system. 202-332-7184. tleadersdc.com. 2516 18th Street Northeast Washington, D.C. 20018. Youth Education D.C. area nonprofit websites. 21st Century School Fund. 202-745-3745. 21csf.org. Thurgood Marshall Center, 1816 12th St. Northwest 4th floor DC 20009. Academy of Hope Adult Public Charter School. 202-269-6623, extension 124. aodc.org. 421 Alabama Avenue Southeast Washington, D.C. 20032. Alliance of Concerned Men. 202-581-5296. acmdc.org, allianceofconcernedmen.org. 3227 Dubois Place Southeast Washington, D.C. 20019 Greenway Community. Boy Scouts of America, BSA. scoutingindc.org. Carlos Rosario International Career Center. 202-734-4900, EXT 402. carlosrosario.org. 514 V Street, NE Washington, D.C. 20002. Chess Girls D.C. 202-438-6377. girlschessdc.com. Catholic University, McGivney Hall, Room 012-620 Michigan Avenue Northeast. Community of Hope, Inc. Improve health and end family homelessness. cohdc.org. 202-407-7757. communityofhopedc.org. 4 Atlantic Street SWDC 20032. Critical Exposure. 202-986-2177. criticalexposure.org. 1816 12th Street Northwest 3rd floor DC 20009. DC Scores. Academic and Athletic Development of Youth. 202-393-6999. dcscores.org. 1140 Connecticut Avenue. NW, Suite 1200, DC, 200,036. District of Columbia International, DCI School. 202-808-9033. dcinternationalschool.org. 1400 Main Drive NW District of Columbia. The Fishing School. 202-399-3618. fishingseahool.org. 4737 Mead STNEDC 20019. Fly by Nature Foundation. Decrease Overall Bullying. 202-441-6317. flybynature.org. For Love of Children. 202-462-8686. flock.org. 1301 Pennsylvania Avenue SC Washington, D.C. 20003. Hope in a Home. 202-387-7091, extension 500. hopeanaahmed.org. 1236 Columbia Road NWDC 20009. Hope Multiplied. 202-387-7091, extension 500. hopemultiplied.org. 80 M St. SC, Washington, D.C. 20003. The Homeless Children's Playtime Project. 202-329-4481. playtimeproject.org. NW, Washington, D.C. Horton's Kids. 202-544-5033. hortonskids.org. 400 Virginia Avenue Southwest Suite C 130, DC 20024. Jubilee Family Services Teen Center. 202-545-7548. 1631 Euclid St. Northwest No. P5, Washington, D.C. 20009. Kids enjoy exercise now, Keen. 301-770-3200. KeenGreetardC.org. laycca.org/202-319-2228. 3224 16th Street NWDC 20010. layc-dc.org, 202-276-2729. LSF 202-244-3438. LatinoStudentFund.org. 555 12th St. Northwest Suite 620 Washington, D.C. 20004. Play and Thrive DC. 202-491-3337. PlayaandDTHRivyDC.com. 1525 Newton St. Northwest G1, Washington, D.C. 20010. The Next Step Public Charter School. NextStepPCS.org. 3047 15th St. NWDC 20009. Sitar Center for the Arts. 202-797-2145-X107. 1700 Colorama Road Northwest No. 101, DC 20009. Safe Shores. 202-645-3200. SafeShores.org. 741 8th Street SEDC 20003. Student Athletes Organized to Understand Leadership, Seoul. SeoulPrograms.org. 1140 3rd STNEDC. Teaching for Change. 202-588-7204. TeachingForChange.org. Teens Run DC. 202-818-8600X3. TeensRUNDC.org. 218 9th Street Southeast Washington, D.C. 20003 Rear Alley. Youth Build Public Charter School. 240-645-3477. YouthBuildPCS.org. 3220 16th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20010. Chapter 2. A list of D.C. area nonprofit organizations. 2. Environmental D.C. area nonprofit websites. African Wildlife Foundation. 202-939-3333. awf.org. 1400 16th St. Northwest Suite 120 Washington, D.C. 20036. O Community Garden. Facebook.com/American University Y Community Garden. 4400 Massachusetts Avenue, NW, Washington, District of Columbia 20016. Anacostia Riverkeeper. 202-863-0158/ AnacostiaRiverkeeper.org. Anacostia Riverkeeper, 515 M St. S.E., Suite 218, Washington, D.C. 20003. Anacostia Watershed Society. Dumbarton Oaks Park Conservancy. 202-333-3547. DOPARK.org. Jelef Community Center 3265 S Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20007. Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture. 571-384-8845. ArcadiaFood.org. 9000 Richmond Highway, Alexandria, Virginia 22309. Anacostia River. 301-699-6204. AnacostiaWS.org. The George Washington House, 4302 Baltimore Avenue, Bladensburg, Maryland 20710. Audubon Naturalist Society. 301-652-9188-X30. ANESHome.org. AudubonNaturalist.org. 8940 Jones Mill Road, Chevy Chase, Maryland 20815. KC Trees 202-833-4010. kctrees.org. 3030 12th Street Northeast, Washington, D.C. Chesapeake Bay Foundation 888-728-3229. cbf.org. 1615 M Street, NW, Washington, District of Columbia 20036. City Blossoms 202-882-2628. cityblossoms.org. cityblossoms.org. 516 Kennedy St. Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20011. Clagett Farm 301-627-4393. clagettfarm.org. 11904 Old Marlboro Pike, Upper M. Marlboro, Maryland 20772. CSG. Planning for the Future. Housing, Transportation, Energy, and the Environment. 202-675-0016. smartergrowth.net. 316 F Street, NE, Suite 200, Washington, D.C. Common Good City Farm. 202-559-7513. commongoodcityfarm.org. V Street, NW, between 2nd and 4th Streets, NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. Farm location. 160 U Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. Office location. D.C. Green Works. 202-518-6195. dcgreenworks.org. 1341 H Street, NE, Suite 203, Washington, D.C. 20002. Earth Day Network. 202-518-0044. earthday.org. 1752 N Street, NW, 7th floor, Washington, D.C. 20036. Echo City Farms. ecocityfarms.org. 6010 Taylor Road, Riverdale, Maryland 20737. Environmenters, the National Council for Science and the Environment. 202-530-5810, extension 224. ncsconline.org. ncscglobal.org/environmenters. 1101 17th St. Northwest, Suite 250, Washington, D.C. 20036. Cube. 800-584-7336. coopamerica.org. 1612 K Street, NW, Suite 600, Washington, D.C. 20006. Lost Dog and Cat Rescue Foundation. 703-295-3647, volunteer. lostdogrescue.org. PO Box 50037, Arlington, Virginia 22205. National Park Service, Rock Creek Park. 202-895-6000. nps.gov/rockr3545, Williamsburg Lane, NW, Washington, D.C. 20008. National Wildlife Federation. 800-822-9919. nwf.org/volunteer/find-opportunities. PO Box 1583, Merrifield, Virginia 22116-1583. Poplar Spring Animal Sanctuary. 301-428-8128. animalsanctuary.org. PO Box 507, Poolsville, Maryland 20837. Potomac River Keeper. 202-888-2037. PotomacRiverKeeperNetwork.org. 3070 M Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20007. Rock Creek Conservancy. 202-237-8866. rockcreekconservancy.org. 4825 Cordell Avenue, Suite 200, Bethesda, Maryland 20814. Smithsonian National Zoological Park. 202-633-36 3025, nationalzoo.si.edu. 3001, Connecticut Avenue, NW, Washington, D.C. 20008. Washington Animal Rescue League. 202-726-2556, Worrell. Worrell.org. 71, Oglethorpe St. NW, Washington, D.C. 20011. Washington Parks and People. 202-462-7275. WashingtonParks.net, volunteer. WashingtonParks.net. Food Help DC area nonprofit websites. Bethesda Cares. 301-907-9244, volunteer. BethesdaCares.org. BethesdaCares.org/get-involved/volunteer-opportunities, 7728 Woodmont Avenue, Bethesda, Maryland 20814. Bread for the City. In Wards 6 and 8. breadforthecity.org, 202-265-2400. 1525 7th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 2001202-561-8587. 1640 Good Hope Road, SC Washington, D.C. 20020. Capital Area Food Bank. 202-644-9800, volunteer. seafoodbank.org. CapitalAreaFoodBank.org. 4900 Puerto Rico Avenue, NE, Washington, D.C. 20017. D.C. Central Kitchen. 202-601-7314. dccentralkitchen.org. 425 2nd Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. D.C. Greens. 202-601-9200. dcgreens.org/volunteer. 2000 P. St. NW No. 240, Washington, D.C. 20036. DC Hunger Solutions. 202-640-1088. dchunger.org. dchunger.org/training-and-outreach/current-trainings. 1200 18th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20036. Food for All. foodforalldc.org. foodforalldc.wordpress.com/volunteer. 1810 16th Street Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. Food and Friends. 202-269-2277, volunteer. foodandfriends.org. 219 Riggs Road, Northeast Washington, D.C. 20011. Food Justice DMV. foodjusticedmv.org. Food Rescue US. foodrescue.us. foodrescue.us/be-the-rescue. Kyanite Kitchen. kyanite.kitchen. Martha's Table. 202-328-6608, volunteer. marthastable.org, marthastable.org/volunteer. 2375 Elvins Road, SC Washington, D.C. 20020. Miriam's Kitchen. 202-452-8926, volunteer. miriamskitchen.org. 2401 Virginia Avenue, NW, Washington, D.C. 20037. So Others Might Eat, Some. 202-797-8806x2109. Some.org, volunteer. Some.org. 71 OST, NW. Shepherd's Table. 301-585-6463x1. shepherdstable.org. 8210 A Dixon Avenue, Silver Spring, Maryland 20910. Thrive DC. 202-503-1533. thrivedc.org. thrivedc.org/volunteer. NW Suite G1, Washington, D.C. 20010 Ward 1. World Central Kitchen. 202-844-6330, hello. wck.org. wck.org/volunteer. 655 New York Avenue Northwest 6th floor, Washington, D.C. 20001 Ward 6. We are family. Ward 1. 202-423-3858. we'refamilydc.org. 202-487-8698. Health and Nutrition DC area nonprofit websites. Arcadia Center for Sustainable Food and Agriculture. arcadiafood.org, 571-384-8845. Bread for the City. breadforthecity.org. NW location, 1525 7th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 2001202-595-7865. SE location, 1700 Good Hope Road, SE Washington, D.C. 20020, 202-587-5904. Common Good City Farm. V. St. NW, between 2nd and 4th St. NW Washington, D.C. 20001. Community Food Works. Farmers Markets. 810 7th Street Northeast Washington, D.C. 20002. Fitness. Back on My Feet. Combats homelessness through the power of running. 202-258-0832, dc.backonmyfeet.org. 122 CST, NW Suite 240 Washington, D.C. 20001. Scores. 202 393-6999 x 310. americascorps.org. americascorps.org/affiliates/DC. 1224 M Street, NW, Suite 200, Washington, D.C. 20005. Education for Sharing. 240-516-6983. educationforsharing.org. 641 S Street, NW, Floor 3, Washington, D.C. 20001. Keene. 2607 Bowen Road, Southeast Washington, D.C. 20020. D.C. Area Clinics, Hospitals, and Treatment Centers. Children's National Medical Center. 202-476-5000. childrensnational.org. 111 Michigan Avenue, NW Washington, D.C. 20010. Clínica del Pueblo. Health Services in the Latino Community. lcdp.org, 202-462-0156. 2831 15th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 2009. Columbia Road Health Services. 202-469-4699. crhs.org. 1660 Columbia Road, NW Washington, D.C. 20009. Family Health and Birth Center Community of Hope. 202-407-7747. communityofhopedc.org/volunteer. cohdc.org. 4 Atlantic STSW Washington, D.C. 20032. Mary's Center. marycenter.org. 202-420-7014. 2333 Ontario Road, NW Washington, D.C. 20009. MedStar Health. 202-444-5545. gunit.georgetown.edu. medstargeorgetown.org/ways-to-give/volunteer. 3800 Reservoir Road, NW Washington, D.C. 20007. Mautner Project of Whitman Walker Health. 202-745-7000. whitman-walker.org/Mautner Project. 1701 14th St. NW, D.C. 20036. Neighbors Constjo. Latino, Bilingual and Multicultural Agency. Prevention of Homelessness. NeighborsConsjo.org. 6323 Georgia Avenue, NW, Suite 206, Washington, D.C. 20011. Planned Parenthood. 202-347-8500, extension 725. ppmw.org. 1108 16th Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20036. Ronald McDonald House. 202-529-8204. rmhcdc.org. rmhc.greaterdc.org. 3727 14th St. Northeast, Washington, D.C. 20017. Second Genesis. Drug and Alcohol Rehabilitation Program. 301-563-1545. secondgenesis.org. 8611 2nd Avenue, Suite 300, Silver Spring, Maryland 20910. Disability Programs in the D.C. area. Columbia Lighthouse for the Blind. clb.org, 240-737-5179. 1825 K Street, NW, Suite 1103, Washington, D.C. 20006. The Arc, D.C. 202-636-2950. arcdc.net. 1825 K St. NW, Suite 1200, Washington, D.C. 20006. The Special Olympics. 202-408-2640-X10. SpecialOlympicSDC.org. 900 2nd St. Northeast, Suite 200, Washington, D.C. 20002. Policy Education in the D.C. area. CMS Health Initiatives. 202-396-5404. cms-dc.org. 1307 1/2 H Street, NE Suite 302, Washington, D.C. 20002. Food, Research, Action Center, FRAC. 202-986-2200. frac.org. 1200 18th Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. 2003 WHITM. Historic D.C. area nonprofit websites. Arlington Historical Society. 703-492-9247. arlingtonhistoricalsociety.org. 1805 South Arlington Ridge Road, Arlington, Virginia 22206. Arlington House, the Robert E. Lee Memorial. 703-235-1530. nps.gov. nps.gov/arho. Located by the Arlington National Cemetery Visitors Center. Cultural Tourism, D.C. 202-661-7581. culturaltourismdc.org. 700 12th Street, NW, Suite 700, Washington, D.C. 20005. Frederick Douglass House, NPS. 202-426-5961. nps.gov/frdo. 1411 W Street, SE, Washington, D.C. 20020. Historical Society of Washington, D.C. 202-249-3955. historydc.org. 801 K Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. Lincoln Cottage. 202-829-0436, extension 224. savingplaces.org. 140 Rock Creek Church Road, NW, Washington, D.C. 20011. Mary McLeod Bethune House, NPS. 202-673-2402. nps.gov/mamc1318, Vermont Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20005. Red Cross History Museum. 202-303-4233. redcross.org/museum/history. American Red Cross National Headquarters, 2025 E Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20006. Smithsonian, National Museum of the American Indian. 202-633-1000. nmi.si.edu/home. 4th St. and Independence Ave SW, Washington, D.C. 2001. Society of the Cincinnati. Patriotic Organization. 202-785-2040. thesocietyofthecincinnati.org. 2118 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20008. Sewell Belmont House. 202-546-1210. nationalwomansparty.org. sewellbelmont.org. 144 Constitution Avenue, NE, Washington, D.C. 20002. Tudor Place. 202-965-0400. tudorplace.org. 1644 31st Street Northwest, Washington, D.C. 20007. HIV and AIDS D.C. area nonprofit websites. AIDS Institute. 202-835-8373. theaidsinstitute.org. 1705 DeSales St. Northwest Suite 700, Washington, D.C. 20009. Brother Help Thyself. 202-347-2246. brotherhelpthyself.com. brotherhelpthyself.org. DC Care Consortium. 202-223-9550. dccare.org. 7059 Blair Road Northwest Suite 101, Washington, D.C. 20012. Helping Individual Prostitutes Survive, HIPS. 202-232-8150. hips.org. 906 H Street, NE, Washington, D.C. 20002. National Minority AIDS Council, NMAC. 202-870-0918. nmac.org. 1000 Vermont Avenue, NW, Washington, D.C. 20005-4903. Pediatric AIDS/HIV Care, Inc. 202-347-5366. pediatricaidshivcare.org. PO Box 77543, Washington, D.C. 20013. Washington AIDS International Foundation. 301-577-1094. waytm.org. 3224 16th Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20010. Homeless D.C. area nonprofit websites. Back on My Feet. 215-772-1080. backonmyfeet.org/Washington-D-C. 500 New Jersey Avenue Northwest, Washington, D.C. 1000 Spring Road, NW, Washington, D.C. Capital Area Food Bank. 300 VST between 2nd and 4th THST, NW Office, 160 U Street, NW. Friendship Place. thrivec.org. 202-503-1533. NW Suite G1, Washington, D.C. 20010. Housing Up. housingup.org, Dylan Ficca, or 202-291-5535, extension 412. 5101 16th Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20011. The Friendship Place. 202-364-1419. friendshipplace.org. 4713 Wisconsin Avenue, NW, Washington, D.C. 20016. Community for Creative Nonviolence. 202-393-1909. theccnv.org. 425 2nd St. NW, Washington, D.C. Community Family Life Services. 202-347-0511, extension 4005. cflsdc.org. 305 EST, NW, Washington, D.C. Community of Hope. 202-407-7757. 4 Atlantic Street, SW, Washington, D.C. 20032. District Alliance for Safe Housing. 202-462-to-3274-x227-dc.org. 219 Riggs Road, NE, Washington, D.C. 20011. Friends of Guest House. 703-549-8072. friendsofguesthouse.org. 1 East Luray Avenue, Alexandria, Virginia 22301. The Homeless Children's Playtime Project. 202-329-4481. Jubilee Housing Inc. 202-299-1240. 202-667-8970. jubileejobs.org. 2712 Ontario Road, NW, Washington, D.C. 20009. Mana. 202-832-1845. manadc.org. 6856 Eastern Avenue Northwest, Suite 100, Washington, D.C. 20012. 202-328-6608, Volunteer. Mary House. 202-780-5137. maryhouse.org. 4303 13th Street Northeast, Washington, D.C. 20017, USA. My Sister's Place. Domestic Violence Shelter. 202-529-5261. mysistersblackydc.org. N Street Village. 202-939-2076. nstreetvillage.org. 1333 N St. N.W., Washington, D.C. 20005. National Alliance to End Homelessness. 202-638-1526. nah.org. endhomelessness.org. 1518 K St. N.W., 2nd floor, Washington, D.C. 20005. Neighbors Constjo. 202-234-6855. neighborsconsjo.org. The Salvation Army. 202-756-2600. salamydc.org. 2626 Pennsylvania Avenue, Washington, D.C. 20037. Samaritan Inns. SamaritaNinns.org. 202-667-8831. 2523 14th STNW, Washington, D.C. 20009. Share DC. Food Network. 301-864-3115, extension 011. CatholicCharities.org. SharedC.org. 3222 Hubbard Road, Landover, Maryland 20785. Sum.org. 202-797-8806. 71 OST, NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. Sums Isaiah House location. 202-797-8806, extension 1068. 75 Hanover Place, NW, Washington, D.C. 20001. Human Rights D.C. area nonprofit websites. Amnesty International. 202-544-0200, 1-800-AMNESTY. IUSA.org. AmnestyUSA.org. 600 Pennsylvania Avenue. SE, 5th floor, Washington, D.C. 20003. Break the Chain Campaign, Institute for Policy Studies. 202-787-5245. ips-dc.org. btcc.ips-dc.org. 1112 16th St. Northwest Suite 600, Washington, D.C. 20036. Care. 202-595 to 2800. care.org. care.org/contact 1899 L Street NW, Suite 500, Washington, D.C., 20036. Columbia Human Rights Committee. IGC.org. 3325, 17th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20010. Guatemalan Human Rights Commission, GHRC. 202-529-6599. GHRC-USA.org. 3321, 12th St. Northeast Washington, D.C. 20017. Human Rights First. 202-547 to 5692. humanrightsfirst.org/about/contact. 805 15th Street NW, Suite 900, Washington, D.C. 20005. Human Rights Watch, HRW. 202-612-4321. hrw.org. 1630 Connecticut Avenue Northwest Suite 500 Washington, D.C. 20005. International Rescue Committee. 202-882-0166. Rescue.org. 1730 M Street, NW, Suite 505, Washington, D.C. 20036. Open Society Foundation. 202-721 to 5600. OpenSocietyFoundations.org. 1730 Pennsylvania Avenue NW, 7th floor, Washington, D.C., 20006. Oxfam International. 800-776 to 9326. OxfamAmerica.org. 1101 17th NW, Suite 300, Washington, D.C., 20036 to 4710. Refugees International. 202-828-0110. RefugeesInternational.org. 2001 S Street NW Suite 700 Washington, D.C. 20009. The Washington Office on Latin America, WALA. 202-797 to 2171. wala.org/get-involved/internships. 1666 Connecticut Avenue Northwest Suite 400 Washington, D.C. 20009. Just Associate, JAS. 202-232 to 1211. justassociates.org. 2040 S St. NW, 3rd floor, Washington, D.C. 20009. Chapter 3. A list of D.C. area nonprofit organizations. 3. International and multicultural D.C. area nonprofit websites. CARE Coalition. 202-331-3320. carecoalition.org. 1612 K Street NW, Suite 204, Washington, D.C. 20006. Lutheran Social Services Refugee Resettlement and Placement. 202-723-3000. lssnca.org. 4406 Georgia Avenue Northwest Washington, D.C. 20011. ARC. East African Children. 202-832-5420. arcafrica.org. 1002 Maryland Avenue Northeast Washington, D.C. D.C. Peace and Economic Justice Program / American Friends Service Committee. 202-544-0324. afsc.org. WashingtonPeaceCenter.net. 1822 RSTNW, 1st floor, Washington, D.C. 20009. The Foundation for International Community Assistance, FINCA. 202-682-1510. finca.org. 1110 15th St. Northwest Suite 600 Washington, D.C. 20005. Oxfam America. 202-496-14 1180. 1107, 17th St. Northwest number 1300, Washington, D.C. 20036. Partners of the Americas. 202-628-3300. Partners.net. 1424 K Street, NW, Suite 700, Washington, D.C. 20005. Refugee and Immigrant Services. 301-593-0241. 11350 Baroque Road, Silver Spring, Maryland 20901. ECDC. Cultural, Educational, and Socio-Economic Development Programs. Immigrant. Refugee. 703-685-0510. ecdcus.org. ecdcinternational.org. 901 South Highland Street, Arlington, Virginia 22204. Immigration and Refugee Services of America, IRSA. 202-797-2105. irsa-uscr.org. refugeesusa.org. 1717 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest Suite 200, Washington, D.C. 20036. International Rescue Committee, IRC. 301-562-8633. theirc.org. 8700 Georgia Avenue Suite 500, Silver Spring, Maryland 20910. Policy Development and International Awareness. Africa Faith and Justice Network. 202-817-3670. afjn.org. 3025 4th Street Northeast Suite 122, Washington, D.C. 20017. Rural Uganda. PO Box 7694, Arlington, Virginia 22207703609-6830. auganda.org. Citizens for Global Solutions. 202-546-3950. globalsolutions.org. 420 7th St. Southeast, Washington, D.C. 20003. The Corporate Council on Africa, CCA. 202-835-1115. africacncl.org. 1100 17th St. Northwest Suite 1000, Washington, D.C. 20036. Nearest metro station, see Farragut North. Det AIDS Trade Africa, Data. 202-639-8010. data.org. data.org/1400 St. NW, Washington, D.C. 20005. Global Youth Partnership for Africa, GYPA. 202-756-4601. gypafrica.org. 1101 Pennsylvania Avenue, NW Suite 601, Washington, D.C. 20004. Interaction. 202-667-8227. interaction.org. 1400 16th St. Northwest Suite 210, Washington, D.C. 20036. Institute for Policy Studies. 202-234-9382. 1301 Connecticut Avenue, NW, Suite 600, Washington, D.C. 20036. MAG America. 202-293-1908. maginternational.org. 1776 K Street, NW, Suite 700, Washington, D.C. 20006. Meridian International Center. 202-667-6800. meridian.org. 1630 Crescent Place, NW, Washington, D.C. 20009. Roots of Development. 202-466-0805. rootsofdevelopment.org. 1325 18th St. Northwest Unit 303, Washington, D.C. 20036. Latino Community DC Area Nonprofit Websites. The Latino Student Fund, LSF. Educational Campus, 1200 Clifton STNWDC 20009. LatinoStudentFund.org, 202-244-3438. Latin American Youth Center, LAYC. LAYC-DC.org, 202-768-7800. 1419 Columbia Road Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. LAYC Career Academy Public Charter School, LAYUCA. 202-866-0409 3224. LAYCCA.org. 3224 16th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20010. Spanish Education Development Center, SED. 202-722-4404, extension 108. sedcenter.org. 4110 Kansas Avenue Northwest Washington, D.C. 20542. The Family Place. 202-265-0149. TheFamilyPLACIDC.org. 3309 16th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 2001. Adult Education, Employment, and Training. Carlos Rosario International Career Center. carlosrosario.org. 514 V Street NE, Washington, D.C. 2000220 734-4900, extension 402. Central American Resource Center of Washington, D.C., Carison. 202-328-9799. carisondc.org. 1460 Columbia Road Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. National Day Laborer Organizing Network Endlin. 1419 V Street NW, Suite 308, Washington, D.C. 20009. Casa Ruby. 202-355-5155. casaruby.org. 2822 Georgia Avenue Northwest Washington, D.C. 20001. La Clnica del Pueblo. lcdp.org, 202-462-0156. 2831 15th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. Latino GLBT History Project. 202-670-5547. LatinoGLBTHistory.org, online application. 2000 14th St. Northwest Suite 105 Washington, D.C. 20009. Mayor's Office on Latino Affairs. 202-671-2823. ola.dc.gov. 2000 14th St. Northwest Suite 200 Washington, D.C. 20009. Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund, MALDEF. 202-293-2828. maldef.org. 1016 16th St. Northwest Suite 100 Washington, D.C. 20036. National Puerto Rican Coalition, Inc. 202-223-3915. nprcinc.org. 1220 L Street NW, Suite 701, Washington, D.C. 20005. Unidas U.S. 202-785-1670. unidasus.org. 1126 16th St. Northwest Suite 600 Washington, D.C. 20036. Gala Hispanic Theater, Grupo de Artistas Latinoamericanos. 202-234-7174. galathatri.org. 3333 14th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20010 H-Bus. Hola Cultura DC. holacultura.com/hola-cultura-internship-program/application. 202-696-9642. holacultura.com. LGIA and DC area nonprofit websites at american.edu/ocl/volunteer/upload/lgbtqia.pdf. Brother help thyself. 202-347-2246. brotherhelpthyself.org. brotherhelpthyself.net. PO Box 77841, Washington, D.C. 20013. Impediret. La Clínica del Pueblo. cldp.org. 202-870-6615. 202-507-4800. 3166 Mount Pleasant St. NW Washington, D.C. 20010. Gay and Lesbian Victory Fund and Leadership Institute. 202-842-8679, 202-628-9151. victoryfund.org. 1133 15th Street Northwest Suite 350 Washington, D.C. 20005. Gay Lesbian Straight Education Network, Colson. 202-347-7780. glsn.org. 1001 Connecticut Avenue Northwest Suite 206 Washington, D.C. 20036. Human Rights Campaign. 202-628-4160. hrc.org. 1640 Rhode Island Avenue NW Washington, D.C. 20036. Latino GLBT History Project. 202-670-5547. LatinoGLBTHistory.org, online application. 2000 14th St. Northwest Suite 105 Washington, D.C. 20009. Log Cabin Republicans. 202-420-7873. logcabin.org. 1090 Vermont Avenue. NW Suite 850 Washington, D.C. 20005. National Black Justice Coalition. 202-319-1552. nbjc.org. 1725 I Street NW, Washington, D.C. 20006. National Center for Transgender Equality, NCTE. 202-903-0112. transequality.org. 1400 16th Street Northwest Suite 510 Washington, D.C. 20005. National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce, NGLCC. 202-234-9181. nglcc.org. 1990 K St. NW, Washington, D.C. 20006. National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, NGLTF. 202-393-5177. thetaskforce.org. 1325 Massachusetts Avenue. NW, Suite 600, Washington, D.C. 20005. Out for Work. 866-571-5428. outforwork.com. outforwork.org. 1325 Massachusetts Avenue NW, Suite 700, Number 702, Washington, D.C. 20005. Parents, Families, and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, Flag Metro D.C. 202-638-3852. pflagdc.org. 1701 14th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. Pride at Work. 202-637-5014. prideatwork.org. 815 16th St. NW Washington, D.C. 20006. Sexual Minority Youth Assistance League, SMILE. smyal.org. 202-546-5940. 410 7th Street Southeast Washington, D.C. 20003. Middle East D.C. area nonprofit websites. American Arab Anti-Discrimination Committee, ADC. 202-244-2990, ADC. adc.org. 1705 DeSalle Street Northwest Suite 500 Washington, D.C. 20036. Arab American Institute, AAI 202-429-9210 AAIUSA.org 1600 K Street, NW Suite 601 Washington, D.C. 20006 Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR care.com/about-us/volunteer-with-us.html 202-488-8787 453 New Jersey Avenue SE Washington, D.C. 20003 Education for Peace in Iraq, EPIC epic-usa.org 900 2nd Street Northeast Suite 216 Washington, D.C. 20002 Institute for Palestine Studies 202-342-3990 palestine-studies.org 3501 M Street, NW, Washington, D.C. 20007 International Center for Religious Diplomacy, ICRD 202-331-9404 icrd.org 1003 K Street, NW Suite 400, Washington, D.C. 20001 The Jerusalem Fund 202-338-1958 TheJerusalemFund.org 2425 Virginia Avenue, NW Washington, D.C. 20037 Karama, Muslim Women Lawyers for Human Rights 202-234-7302 Karama.org 1420 16th St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20036 Middle East Institute, May MEI.edu 202-785-1141 MEI.edu 202-785-1141 extension 206 1319 18th Street Northwest Washington, D.C. 20036 Muslim Women's Association MWAWashington.dc.org 3430 Connecticut Avenue, NW Washington, D.C. 20008 National Council on U.S. Arab Relations 202-293-6466 NCUSAR.org 1730 M St. NW, Suite 503, Washington, D.C. 20036 Refugee and Immigration D.C. Area Nonprofit Websites African Immigrant and Refugee Foundation 301-593-0241 airfound.org 11350 Baroque Road, Silver Spring, Maryland 20901 AUDA.com 202-387-4848 6925B Willow Street, NWDC 20012 Capital Area Immigration Rights, CAIR Coalition caircoalition.org 1612 K Street, NWDC 20006, Suite 204 Central American Resource Center of Washington, D.C., Carison 202-328-9799 carisondc.org 1460 Columbia Road, Northwest Washington, D.C. Education for Peace in Iraq, EPIC enablingpeace.org epic-usa.org 1140 3rd St. Northeast 2nd floor, Washington, D.C. 20002 Ethiopian Community Development Council, Inc. ECDC 703-685-0510 ecdcuz.org 901 South Highland Street, Arlington, Virginia 22204 Immigration and Refugee Services of America, IRSA 202-797-2105 irsa-uscr.org ref4uugeesusa.org 1717 Massachusetts Avenue Northwest Suite 200 Washington, D.C. 20036. International Rescue Committee, IRC. 301-562-8633. Rescue.org. Rescue.org/volunteer-opportunities/silver-spring-MD. 8719 Colesville Road 3rd floor, Silver Spring, Maryland 20910. Institute for East African Councils on Higher Education, IEA Councils. 202-997-6684. IEACouncils.org. 3636 16th Street NW Washington, D.C. 20010. Lutheran Social Services Refugee Resettlement and Placement. 202-723-3000. LSSNCA.org. 4406 Georgia Avenue Northwest Washington, D.C. 20011. Mary House. 202-780-5137. maryhouse.org. Refugee Alliance Network, RAN. 702-752-8809. Facebook.com/ARAGRCI. Field Office, C/ORRUU Congregation 6301 River Road, Bethesda, Maryland 20817-5825. Main Office, 2822 Georgia Avenue Northwest Washington, D.C. 20001. Refugees International. 202-828-0110. RefugeesInternational.org. 1800 M Street, NW Suite 405N Washington, D.C. 20036. Women for Women International. 202-737-7705. WomenForWomen.org. 2000 M Street NW, Suite 200, Washington, D.C. 20036. Senior Welfare D.C. Area Nonprofit Websites. Iona. 202-895-9448. Iona.org. 4125 Albemarle Street Northwest Washington, D.C. 20016. Seabury Age in Place. 202-635-9384 EXT 102. SeaburyResources.org. 2501 18th St. Northeast Washington, D.C. 20018. Alliance for Aging Research. 202-293-2856. AgingResearch.org. 1700 K St. NW, Suite 740, Washington, D.C. 20006. Armed Forces Retirement Home. 202-541-7627. AFRH.gov. 700 North Capitol St. Northeast Washington, D.C. 20011. Arts for the Aging. 301-255-0103. AFTAarts.org. 12320 Park Lawn Drive, Rockville, Maryland 20852. D.C. Center for Independent Living. 202-388-0033. DCCIL.org. 1400 Florida Avenue NE Suite 300, Washington, D.C. 20002. Emmaus Services for the Aging. The Washington Peace Center. 202-234-2000. WashingtonPeaceCenter.org. 1525 Newton St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20010. Friendship Terrace, Seabury Resources. 202-244-7400. SeaburyResources.org. FriendshipTerrace.com. 4201 Butterworth Place, NW Washington, D.C. 20016. Sarah's Circle. 202-332 to 1400 EXT 11. sarahcircle.org. 2551 17th Street Northwest No. 103, Washington, D.C. 20009. Stoddard Baptist Global Care at the Washington Center for Aging Services. 202-541-6200. WCASDC.org. StoddardBaptistGlobal.org. 2601 18th Street Northeast, Washington, D.C. 20018. Vida Spanish Senior Center. 202-483-5800. VidaSeniorCenters.org. 1842 Calvert St. Northwest Washington, D.C. 20009. We Are Family. Seniors in the Shaw, North Capitol Street, Adams Morgan, Petworth, and Columbia Heights. 202-487-8698. We'reFamilyDC.org. 1525 Newton STNW, Washington, D.C. 20010.